I'm John Paul Wright, and this is Entertainment Hacker. Today I want to talk about something that's been on my mind for a little while, and it took me some time to process this until I finally asked myself, are there really social justice warriors in Japan, or where are they? And I'm in Tokyo, so from my point of view, it looks like mostly an American thing. I don't really know a lot about Europe. I think they're in Europe too. I didn't do a bunch of research, but from what I understand, the majority and the way they're infesting the entertainment industry is an American thing, and it's pretty clear from the way Hollywood is going. So I wanted to get into why there are no social justice warriors in Japan. I have not met one, seen one. I don't think there's a Japanese word for it. I'm almost 99% certain there's no Japanese word for it. And I read an article by a girl who worked in a coffee shop who put her opinion out there, and it seems pretty good to me. Seems pretty solid, and let me just read a little bit of that. You guys tell me what you think. It's called Why Are There No SJWs in Japan, is the name of her article. This is just my personal opinion. I cannot claim any expertise in this, but I honestly believe it's a side effect of Japan's historical situation. Let me explain. In the West, most SJWs are motivated by what they believe to be righting historical wrongs against others. Now, when I first saw The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens, I was like, this seems like really politically correct. Like, it seems like there's diversity that's very deliberate, portioned out equally, not kind of like a natural story. I was like, okay, it's political correctness, but I didn't really know what social justice warrior meant. As a little more time went on, I saw comments that SJWs ruined Star Wars, they ruined Last Jedi, so I figured, oh, Kathleen Kennedy looks like a feminist, so SJW must be feminist plus political correct people. Then I kept researching a little more. Let's keep reading. For example, most American SJWs have constructed an ideology based on the idea white people, even if they've done absolutely nothing to people of color, are still unwitting racist because of white privilege, etc., none of which they take responsibility for. In an age where there are no legal constraints on aforementioned people of color from achieving whatever they want in life, the previous president of the United States is an example. Grew up with a single mother in one of the poorer states in the Union, but through hard work and perseverance achieved 2 terms in the most prestigious office on earth. So from the perspective of someone growing up in Japan, who I think she's half Japanese, half American if her English is this good, she perceives this as mostly an American thing. Now here's the reason why Japan escapes social justice warriors and why mostly the West has them. This comes from the USA's regrettable history of slavery and discrimination, which took a civil war and decades of activism to fix. This pattern can be seen in nearly every country which changed to stay in step with the modern world. Sooner or later, they all had social disorder that came from a class demanding their rights and a class which had to give them. Industrial Revolution, era England, France with the Reign of Terror, the March of Revolution in Prussia, don't know what that is, the February Uprising and October Revolution in World War I era Russia, and the can't pronounce it revolution in China. So a bunch of examples of revolutions similar to the US and Civil War, something like that. But there's one country which conspicuously lacked this social revolution, which always seems to accompany the move to modern times. Japan never had this massive social revolution from the lower classes, which we should have given the speed with which Japan transformed, but we never did. I guess she means given credit to Japan or something like that. The nobility in Japan became the industrialists, the samurai became the civil servants, their favored economic policy, mercantilism, and increasing domestic consumption continues to this day. Unlike the nobles in Europe, our ones didn't hesitate to switch, meaning Japan's ones, to commerce as a means of making money. A lot of the keiretsu traced their descendant to business founded by the nobles. Keiretsu means just some old rich family. I've asked around to a dozen school teachers. Nobody knows what it is, so it must be kind of an obscure reference, but I've been told it's probably a rich family from the past. Everything's the same. The feudal estates become feudal industries, where the relationship between the employer and worker is far more complicated than it is in Europe. Loyalty is everything. You show devotion to your employer, they take care of you, keeping you around even when it's economically more advantageous to cut you loose. To sum it up, We don't have an SJW problem because there's no existing tradition of the social problems which plagued other countries and still do, thanks to tribal politics which pit different groups against each other. With the exception of the Ainu, Japan has always been based on mutual obligation. There is nothing to point to it as historical grievance a large majority of the population can rally around. And she got 500 comments for this article, and I'm going to read one of them because there's no way we're going through all of them. This is from a professor, and he says, in the US, where SJW culture seems to get more traction, people take the moral high ground by bringing up grievances. You wronged me, your ancestors enslaved mine, women don't make as much money, etc. One way to put a negative spin on SJWs is to call them complainers. In Japan, complaining is frowned upon. Japan is one place where enduring hardship is celebrated. Indeed, young people work themselves to death rather than complain about their workload. So, yeah, I mean, also Japan is a culture where people just do not like to hear complaining about things. I mean, unless you have some kind of, like, really good reason, like, you got some kind of, like, really out of control fever, you have some kind of real muscle issue or muscle pain or some kind of hospital appointment or something, they don't like to hear excuses like you couldn't get it done. They're very generous with, like, off time. I have 25 fully paid vacation days off plus sick. I mean, they're very generous with that kind of thing at work, but when it's time to get the stuff done, they don't like excuses. So if an SJW came here and be like, well, why aren't women the lead in, movies and entertainment? They'd be like, well, because this guy made the movie, it's his movie, and he makes a decision. That's it. So it's cut and dry. Alright, anyway, that's all I have on this. I'm sure this video is going to get some kind of controversy, some disagreement, but I mean, my bottom line is Japan doesn't have social justice warriors based on its history. And we don't have a history of slavery and civil war, and, because of that, no one's really coming up and saying, hey, we have to correct these wrongs from the past, because that's what social justice warriors apparently are doing, and I kind of felt like that for a long time. I just didn't put it in those words, and with Star Wars, here's what I personally think, and I'm sure people might disagree or hate me for this, but I think they were trying to put men down, especially white males, and that's pretty apparent because we have Brie Larson and Rian Johnson mentioning white dudes or white males, and Sandra Bullock too, so it's no secret that you could say white male and get away with it easier than anything else. So they feel like in the 80s and the 90s, I think movies were dominantly white male leads, and they were. I mean, that's just a fact. That's just history. So SJWs just think that they're going to come in and redo Star Wars and put a bunch of women in the powerful roles, and that's going to fix Star Wars. So when you hear all these things like, what's going to happen? Is it going to get better? Maybe it will, but if SJW warriors still have some say in the script and how it gets written, then they're just trying to rewrite the past. So they just don't care, and they don't care about the money. This is another confusion people have. They're like, what are they doing? They're losing this money, And I think there are some people in Lucasfilms, there have to be, who want to just stop the bullshit and just make money and sell to the evil 40-year-old white males like myself. But they're probably just kind of in a lower tier in the company and just not high enough up to make the decisions to change the script or something like that. So, yeah, you guys let me know what you think. I have a bad feeling about this because it's kind of a controversial topic. Anyway, if you want to subscribe here, love to have you. Community is growing, and I will see you next time.